In between making aircrete test samples and working on the garden wall, we've also been trying to make progress on the foundation for our home. In this video, we'll show you how that's been going. We had finished up our rough plumbing and electrical for most of the house, and so the next step was to pour the interior wall footers. Here I am building the forms for the interior wall footers. We wanted to pour concrete footers for the interior walls, but we want to make the interior walls out of aircrete, and so we wanted them to be built on a solid concrete footer, and so that's what we're pouring here. There are several reasons that we wanted to build the interior walls out of aircrete. The first is aesthetic. We like the look of the aircrete walls and wanted to kind of have that going throughout the house, not only on the exterior walls, but also on the interior of the house as well. There are also some practical reasons as well. The first part of it being structural. They will provide some structural support, the main part of that being shear strength. So they will serve as a shear wall to the exterior walls to give them strength from, kind of being pushed in. And they will also provide some means of support for the ceiling or rafter. They will be partially load bearing. They also kind of another great benefit of doing an aircrete interior wall is you get that kind of insulative effect. And we don't want the insulation for the heat value. We want it for the sound dampening aspect. The sound between like the bedroom space and the main living space. So that was attractive to us as well. So we're building these footers in such a way that they are the exact width of the wall that is going to be sitting on top of them. So we'll actually be able to use the width of the footer to support the forms and to kind of clamp the forms up against. And so we're going to be building the interior walls 5 inches wide, and so I'm building 5-inch footers here. Of course, part of that means that these footers have to be in the exact place that the interior walls are going to be. So that has forced me to kind of go along and make some exact measurements and figure out exactly where all that's going to be and lay all that out inside the house. So all of these footers have to be, level, they have to be square, and they have to be in the exact location because I'm basically, building the base for the walls of the inside of the house. One kind of nice thing about that is we're able to see, once we kind of stand inside the pad, we're able to kind of see and better visualize, what the house is going to look like and imagine what the space is going to look like. So that was pretty neat. We decided that we would be making our own concrete to fill in these footers with, and so we needed some gravel for that. And so here we are having the gravel delivered for our site. I ordered 18 tons, and so it made just a gigantic pile and had them dump it, right by the pad so we would have easy access to it. We ordered a 4.5 cubic feet cement mixer online, and it was delivered within the week. And here I am starting to put that together. It wasn't too bad of a process, and we got to start mixing our own concrete. This is the first time that we had ever used a cement mixer or mixed our own concrete, and actually the process was really fun, especially just doing kind of a small mix like this, filling in these little footers. It was a neat process. I actually used a 1-2-3 mix, so that's 1 part cement, 2 parts sand, and 3 parts rock, which I believe is supposed to yield a concrete strength of between 4,000 and 4,500 psi. So that's a high strength concrete, and I'm doing that because I'm using it as a footer. I might mention here also that we got the sand that we needed for all the concrete that we're making ourselves here on the pad from a pond on our property. It's actually a pond that we built earlier in the year when we rented a backhoe. So we built up our own pond and swale and routed some of the rainfall water that we get in this area into that pond. And it filled up several times during the monsoon season and brought in so much really good clean sand that we've been able to harvest barrel after barrel after barrel. And so all the sand for this has come from our pond. It was pretty cool. Here we are filling in the forms just with a bucket. It took several mixes to make enough concrete for this. We did have some low spots that we left there purposefully because there'll be a doorway in that area, and we wanted to leave it below the surface of the floor so that it won't interfere with the finished surface. After finishing up the interior wall footers for one side of the house, we moved to the other side, which would be the side that has the master bedroom and bath, and started working on forming up those interior walls. Because I have the bathroom there, I wasn't able to do all of them, but I could do this kind of long wall that just divides off the master bedroom and bath. So I started working on that. While we were pouring concrete and kind of in the mode, we decided to go ahead and pour our front porch. It's not huge, it's only a 5x8 area, but it was a fairly big pour for us, especially with this little mixer. So I formed it all up, and one fateful afternoon decided to start pouring this. This really ended up giving me a new appreciation for people who do this kind of work every day. This was a real workout for me. This took me about 2.5 to 3 hours of just mixing concrete batch after batch as fast as I possibly could and pouring them into this form, trying to kind of stay ahead of the concrete that I'd already poured drying out. You know, what I first poured is getting drier and drier, because this, you know, took me over 2 hours to do this. And so this, I felt like this was like a 2-hour-long marathon. I was getting pretty wore out. Like I say, really gives me an appreciation for people who do this every day. It's good, hard, physical labor. This was quite an experience, but I got this little thing done. We almost ran out of concrete, or ran out of cement. We used every bit of Portland cement that we had on the property, and I ended up using a couple bags of Quickcrete that we had even. And after I'd used every speck that we had on the property up, I barely had enough to finish it, but it ended up working out okay. April came out and helped me finish it, and it turned out pretty nice. My favorite part of doing concrete is taking the forms off. It's so satisfying to see how it turned out. And so here we are taking the forms off of the interior walls that we poured on, you know, kind of the guest bedroom and bath side of the home. These all turned out pretty decent. We'd made sure to kind of tap along the sides and get it smoothed out and get the air pockets out. So I was pretty pleased how it turned out. It was a lot of fun. So here I am starting to fill the pad with gravel. This was kind of a long, laborious task since we didn't, you know, want to rent any heavy equipment to do this. It actually worked out fine just to do it by hand with the wheelbarrow, you know, kind of whenever we had time. So usually if I had an hour or two extra or something in the afternoon, I'd come out and just shovel some gravel for a while. So the reason we're shoveling gravel, you know, and trying to fill the pad with 4 inches of gravel, you know, kind of evenly and throughout the entire pad, is to prevent the rise of moisture up to the concrete pad, because actually water can transmit through cement. And so, you know, even in the desert, it's a good idea. I was sorely tempted to skip this step and to, you know, skip the gravel layer and pour the concrete directly onto the dirt. But after researching it and thinking it over, we decided it was worth putting in this gravel layer just to ensure ourselves that we don't have that water issue. So basically, the way the subfloor is built is we'll have, you know, 4 inches of gravel, and that way if there was ever any, you know, major water event that brought water to the surface, you know, it's not going to hang out in the gravel. It's going to sink back down, you know, to the bottom of the gravel layer into the soil, and so you're not going to have standing water in that 4 inches of gravel. And that's what that gravel is for, is to provide a separation, a leach field, as it were, kind of for the water, so that water is away from your concrete pad. On top of that, we'll put sand and then a layer of plastic, and on top of that plastic is where we'll actually pour our aircrete pad, and our aircrete pad layer has an insulation value, so we'll provide our value for the floor and also thermal mass, and then finally we'll cap that off with a mesh layer and plaster layer. Also, we are considering doing part of our floor as an earth floor, and so it may be kind of a hybrid floor throughout the pad. But in any case, we have to have the gravel spread through the entire pad. Also, I might mention here that, of course, you know, in our county, we have an opt-out permit plan. So basically, we're not forced to follow any particular building codes. And so we can just kind of do what makes sense to us. And, you know, we're kind of the ones that are ultimately responsible for it. So, you know, what we're doing isn't necessarily the way you should do it. We're just showing you how we did it and what made sense to us. Here I am shoveling some gravel and transporting it with the wheelbarrow within the pad. You can see I made some little ramps just to protect the areas of the pad that had the water line and the electric lines running under, just so I didn't, you know, run over them continuously with the heavy wheelbarrow wheel, just to protect them as I was going back and forth, filling in the pad with gravel there. Moving all this gravel into the pad was a bit of a daunting task, you know, just the thought of moving 18 tons of gravel. But, you know, it actually wasn't that bad. You just, you know, I worked on it for, you know, a couple hours every day, usually in the cool of the evening. And it just wasn't that bad of a process. It's just amazing how, a little bit of effort over time on a daily basis adds up. And so that's what this was here, just slowly working at getting it filled in. My next thing here was to move on to making this second manifold for the water system. So this is the manifold for the portion of the water system that's going to be in the master bath and kind of on that other side of the house here. So I had the two 3/4 inch PEX lines coming in, the red for hot and in this case the white for cold. And then I just changed over to the blue pipe. I used the white pipe because I already had some left over and didn't want to spend the money just to make it blue. The white will work fine. In any case, I ran both of those lines up through the cement footer and also put the stand for this kind of manifold box in the footer itself. And so that worked out really well. It'll be kind of flush with actually the wall of the closet of the master bedroom is where this manifold will be in the finished house. And I just started building the manifold. So I have all the lines for the cold on one side and all the lines for the hot on the other side. And I'm kind of building them out to the valve, and as soon as I get the bathroom moved out of the way and kind of repositioned, I'll start running these lines to their locations within the master bathroom. And here we are removing the forms for the master bedroom and bathroom side of the house, that one kind of long straight wall that I poured. Just kind of removing the stakes first and then unbolting, kind of unscrewing the wooden form and then removing the plastic and kind of peeling those wooden forms off. We ended up leaving these forms on for over 7 days in order to give the concrete plenty of time to cure. And during that time we had plastic covering everything up, and that plastic we found works really well, especially when we have it kind of weighted down with dirt so the wind doesn't get up under it. And anyway, it works really well at keeping the moisture in the concrete and keeping the concrete wet during that critical first 7 days of curing time. Otherwise, you'd have to come out and kind of water it, several times a day. But we found that the plastic keeps the water in. Whenever we peel the plastic off, it's always, nice and wet underneath. Our next step to finishing up this foundation is going to require that we move our temporary bathroom. And so that'll kind of be the next thing I need to work on, getting it moved to another location kind of just outside the pad and re-hooked up to our septic system. I can then finish running the plumbing on the master bedroom and bathroom and also form and pour those interior walls. We also have a few more test samples that we want to create and test. And we'll also be doing some dry testing on some of our previous samples.
Thank you so much for joining us on our house building adventures. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Cool.